The Metamorphosis is a novella written by Franz Kafka and published in 1915. It is one of Kafka's best-known works and a prominent example of literary modernism. The story follows Gregor Samsa, a traveling salesman, who wakes up one morning to find himself transformed into a giant insect-like creature. The Metamorphosis is often regarded as a sad and melancholic story. The narrative primarily focuses on Gregor's psychological and emotional struggles as he tries to cope with his new physical form and the impact it has on his relationships with his family. Transformation. The central theme of the story is the sudden and unexplained transformation of Gregor Samsa into a monstrous creature. This transformation is taken quite literally, but it also serves as a metaphor for alienation, isolation, and the human condition. One significant passage in the Metamorphosis that describes Gregor's transformation and reflects on its meaning is found early in the novella. Here is an excerpt from the story. As Gregor Samsa awoke one morning from uneasy dreams, he found himself transformed in his bed into a gigantic insect. He lay on his armor-hard back and saw, as he lifted his head up a little, his brown, arched abdomen divided up into rigid bow-like sections. From this height the blanket, just about ready to slide off completely, could hardly stay in place. His numerous legs, pitifully thin in comparison to the rest of his circumference, flickered helplessly before his eyes. "What has happened to me?" he thought. It was no dream. His room, or regular human room, only a little on the small side, lay quiet between the four familiar walls. Above the table on which a collection of cloth samples was unpacked and spread out, hung the picture which he had cut out of an illustrated magazine a little while ago and set in a pretty gilt frame. It was a picture of a woman with a fur hat and a fur boa. She sat erect there, lifting up in the direction of the viewer a solid fur muff into which her entire forearm had disappeared. In this passage, Kafka vividly describes Gregor's physical transformation, depicting him as a monstrous vermin with a hard, armored back and numerous thin legs. The detailed description highlights the grotesque and unsettling nature of the metamorphosis. It presents a stark contrast between Gregor's previous human form and his current insect-like state. The phrase "unsettling dreams" hints at a sense of unease or dissatisfaction that existed prior to the transformation. This suggests that the transformation may not be solely a physical phenomenon but also a reflection of Gregor's psychological state. The description of Gregor's thoughts, "What has happened to me?" indicates his confusion and shock at his altered condition, emphasizing his detachment from his former self. The mention of Gregor's room, which is described as a regular human room, highlights the stark contrast between his current state and the familiar, ordinary life he had before. The room becomes a symbol of the mundane and familiar world that has now become alien to him. The description of the picture on the wall, featuring a woman with a fur hat and muff, adds to the contrast and the yearning for a sense of normalcy and human connection. The picture represents a glimpse into a world that Gregor can no longer be a part of, further accentuating his isolation and his search for meaning in his transformed state. The passage raises questions about identity, the nature of humanity, and the inherent instability of existence. It explores the theme of alienation as Gregor's physical transformation separates him from the human world, challenging his sense of self and his place in society. By starting the story with such a striking and enigmatic transformation, Kafka sets the stage for the exploration of deeper existential and psychological themes throughout the novella. Gregor's struggle to reconcile his previous identity with his new insect-like form highlights the existential crisis of the individual and the search for meaning in an unpredictable and absurd world. Family dynamics. Kafka delves into the dynamics of Gregor's family, particularly the complex relationships between Gregor and his parents and sister. Gregor's transformation forces them to confront their own fears and insecurities, revealing the fragile nature of familial bonds. Here is an excerpt from the Metamorphosis that depicts the dynamics within Gregor's family. At the other side door his sister came in a little while later and looked anxiously for a chair on which she could set out the things she had brought with her. This job was all the more tiring because she was always having to catch herself from jumping up and running away, since she was naturally not used to walking on all fours. She often did in fact jump up and run away, but only as far as the door of the room. She must have been able to sense from the smell that Gregor was on the other side. In this passage, Kafka focuses on Gregor's sister and her interaction with him. Gregor's sister is initially depicted as anxious, searching for a chair to set out things she has brought. This suggests that she is making an effort to assist Gregor and attend to his needs. However, the narration reveals that her actions are tinged with fear, as she frequently catches herself from jumping up and running away. The mention of her walking on all fours and her tendency to run away to the door shows how Gregor's transformation disrupts the normal dynamics within the family. Gregor's sister's unease and aversion to being near him underscore the growing distance and discomfort between them. The passage also hints at the sensory perception of Gregor's sister. She can sense Gregor's presence through smell, which further isolates Gregor and highlights the physical and emotional barrier that exists between him and his family. The fact that she only goes as far as the door suggests a boundary or limitation in her willingness to engage with Gregor. This excerpt illuminates the strained relationship between Gregor and his sister, reflecting the larger dynamics within the family. It showcases the family's struggle to come to terms with Gregor's transformation and how it affects their interactions and emotional responses. The underlying tension and fear contribute to the fragmentation of the family unit, highlighting the fragility of familial bonds in the face of challenging circumstances. Gregor experiences anguish as he grapples with his transformed state and the existential dilemmas it poses. Additionally, the story explores the theme of authenticity, as Gregor's transformation forces him to confront his true self and face the dissonance between his internal and external identity. Absurdity and Surrealism. Kafka is known for his portrayal of absurd and surreal situations, and the Metamorphosis exemplifies this style. The novella presents an inexplicable event that challenges traditional notions of reality and normalcy. Here is an excerpt from the Metamorphosis that reflects the themes of absurdity and surrealism. The office assistant was the boss's man, spineless, and with no understanding. What about if he reported sick? But that would be extremely strained and suspicious, as in 15 years of service Gregor had never once yet been ill. His boss would certainly come round with the doctor from the medical insurance company, accuse his parents of having a lazy son, and accept the doctor's recommendation not to make any claim, as the doctor believed that no one was ever ill but that many were work shy. And what's more, would he have been entirely wrong in this case? In this passage, Kafka presents a surreal and absurd situation involving Gregor and his workplace. The office assistant, who is described as spineless and lacking understanding, is considering reporting Gregor as sick due to his transformation into an insect. The absurdity lies in the assistant's perception of Gregor's condition, as it is beyond the realm of normal illness and defies rational explanation. The notion of Gregor, an insect-like creature, being treated as a lazy son or someone faking illness adds to the surreal nature of the situation. The discussion of the boss coming with a doctor from the medical insurance company, accusing Gregor's parents, and the doctor's belief that people are work-shy rather than genuinely ill all contribute to a sense of absurdity. The passage challenges conventional notions of reality, rationality, and the norms of society. It highlights the dissonance between Gregor's transformed existence and the expectations and judgments of those around him. The absurdity and surrealism serve to create a sense of disorientation and underscore the existential themes explored throughout the novella. By introducing these bizarre and irrational elements, Kafka invites readers to question the boundaries of reality and the arbitrariness of social norms. The passage exemplifies how Kafka employs the elements of absurdity and surrealism to disrupt conventional expectations and provoke contemplation about the nature of existence and human behavior. Alienation and Isolation. Gregor's transformation sets him apart from the human world, leading to his isolation and increasing distance from his family. He becomes a burden to his family, who initially show concern but eventually reject him. The story explores themes of social alienation and the inherent difficulties in connecting with others. Here is an excerpt from the Metamorphosis that portrays Gregor's alienation and isolation. His mother certainly had to see that he was no longer capable of taking part in the family's life, believing, on the contrary, that it would be the best for him if she let him be. In contrast, his father considered that complete collapse of the table, with its legs in the air, a necessary preparation for the layout of a new, albeit temporary, home for Gregor. Furthermore, nobody visited him, nobody in the family wanted to see him, nobody wanted to be in contact with him until the day of his death. In this passage, Kafka highlights the theme of alienation and isolation experienced by Gregor. His mother recognizes that Gregor's transformed state renders him incapable of participating in the family's life. However, rather than attempting to understand or support him, she chooses to keep her distance. This showcases the growing gap between Gregor and his family members, who gradually view him as an inconvenience and a burden. On the other hand, Gregor's father takes a more practical approach, considering the transformation as a mere obstacle that can be overcome. His father's focus on finding a new living arrangement for Gregor implies that Gregor's presence in the household is tolerated, but only as a temporary measure. This demonstrates a lack of genuine care and acceptance. The passage further emphasizes Gregor's isolation by stating that nobody visits him and no one in the family wants to be in contact with him until his death. This stark rejection by his own family exacerbates his sense of alienation and highlights the harsh reality of his situation. Gregor is left to endure his transformed existence in solitude, cut off from any meaningful human connection. Through this portrayal of alienation and isolation, Kafka reflects on themes of social alienation, the fragility of human relationships, and the difficulties of genuine understanding and acceptance. It underscores the profound impact of Gregor's transformation on his relationships and emphasizes the emotional and psychological toll it takes on him. His transformation into an insect, the rejection and isolation he experiences from his family, and the indifference of society all contribute to a pervasive feeling of meaninglessness and disconnection. This reflects the existentialist belief that individuals often face a sense of estrangement and absurdity in their existence. The Metamorphosis raises questions about the meaning of life and the purpose of existence. Gregor's transformation prompts an exploration of the quest for meaning in the face of absurdity and the human struggle to find significance in a seemingly meaningless world. The story suggests that meaning and purpose must be actively sought and constructed by the individual rather than relying on external sources or societal expectations. The novella evokes a sense of sadness as Gregor's physical condition leads to his isolation from society and his own family. The rejection and abandonment he experiences, along with the indifference and cruelty of those around him, contribute to a deep feeling of sadness and emotional anguish. Gregor's longing for human connection and his inability to bridge the widening gap between himself and others elicit a sense of sympathy and sorrow. Additionally, the story's exploration of existential themes, such as the search for meaning, the futility of existence, and the questioning of one's identity, further contribute to the overall melancholic tone. The existential crises faced by Gregor, as he grapples with his transformed state and the subsequent loss of purpose and connection, evoke a profound sense of sadness and hopelessness. Kafka's portrayal of Gregor's tragic circumstances and his ultimate fate in the novella highlights the oppressive nature of the human condition and the struggle to find meaning in a seemingly indifferent and absurd world. The story's poignant exploration of these themes lends itself to a somber and reflective reading experience, eliciting feelings of sadness and contemplation. The Metamorphosis is considered a seminal work of literature due to its exploration of complex themes, its innovative narrative style, and its lasting impact on the literary landscape. It continues to be widely studied and analyzed for its psychological depth and its exploration of human nature.